They say the hour before sunset is the most beautiful. Photographers call it golden hour, all soft light and long shadows, painting everything like it's worth remembering. That was the hour I met her. Her name was Claire. She was standing by the window at a mutual friend's engagement party, sipping on white wine like it was her job. She had this calm energy, like someone who's never had to rush for a bus. You know the type. Confident, graceful, just enough laugh lines to suggest depth, not damage. I was wearing a blazer that was too tight in the shoulders, and she looked like a woman who had never once bought something on sale. Naturally, I was smitten. "You look like someone who just lost a staring contest with a spreadsheet," she said, smirking as I awkwardly hovered by the hors d'oeuvres table. That was her opening line. Not "hi." Not "nice to meet you." No, she came in like a thunderclap, and I was already drenched. I replied with something about pivot tables, because apparently, I thought flirting meant Excel jokes. She laughed, which either meant she was polite or deranged. Either way, I liked it. Within 6 months, we were married. 2 years later, we had a mortgage, a golden retriever named Toby, and a shared Amazon Prime account. We had rituals, too. Thursday takeout, Sunday grocery runs, watching bad reality TV while pretending we were better than it. From the outside, we looked like an ad for settling down. From the inside, well, it was peaceful, predictable, the kind of marriage people envy right before they learn the details. I wasn't the type to snoop. Never once checked her phone. That's trust, right? Real trust? Or maybe just a really polite kind of denial. I thought love meant comfort, stability. Claire made the bed every morning and laughed at my dad jokes. She still kissed me on the cheek when I made her coffee. I thought that meant something. Turns out, it did. Just not the thing I hoped. If Claire had a love language, it was consistency. Same breakfast every morning. Oatmeal, honey drizzle, exactly 3 slices of banana. I once joked she portioned like a pharmacist. She smiled and said, "You can't overdose on peace." We lived in a rhythm. Monday to Friday, I'd leave for work at 7:45 a.m., she at 8:15. I always caught a whiff of her lavender perfume on the doorknob. Saturdays were for errands, Sundays for pancakes and silence. Not the awkward kind, the married kind. Comfortable, familiar, almost holy. I thought that meant we were thriving. Our friends said we were the stable couple. You know the ones. The couple people compare themselves to at dinner parties. Why can't we be more like Jack and Claire? I wore that reputation like a badge. I thought she did, too. Claire worked in interior design. She was good at it, had a knack for making spaces feel like home. Irony, in hindsight, is a vicious little prankster. She'd bring home samples and ideas, sketch them at the kitchen island. She once stayed up until 3 a.m. designing a foyer for a client she said deserved better light. That's how Claire operated, fixing things quietly, gracefully, until they looked like they'd always been whole. We were at dinner one night. Nothing fancy, just tacos and cheap red wine. She was scrolling through photos of a client's new living room when she said something that, at the time, felt like nothing. You know, if I ever disappeared, no one would notice for weeks. I keep things so neat. I laughed. "You're dramatic." I'd noticed before the coffee pot cooled. She didn't smile. Looking back, I wonder how many things she said that I mistook for poetry, how many little smoke signals I missed because I was too busy being comfortable. I had no idea the fire had already started. It was just burning somewhere I couldn't see yet. It started with something laughably small. One morning, I couldn't find a sock. Not both, just one. The dryer's favorite snack. Normally, I wouldn't care. I'd grab another pair and move on. But that day, I dug through the drawer, checked under the bed, even looked behind the hamper. Nothing. So I asked Claire, "Hey, did you happen to see my gray dress sock? The one with the little navy diamonds?" She didn't even look up from her tablet. Probably with the others. "Did you check the laundry basket?" I had. Twice. I know, it sounds stupid. A missing sock. But something about her tone, breezy, dismissive, just a little too casual, stuck with me. Like she wasn't even trying to fake interest. That night, I noticed her phone buzzed twice around midnight. She was in the shower. I glanced at the screen, more out of habit than curiosity. It lit up with a name I didn't recognize. M.T. Just that, initials. Not Mark, not Matt, just M.T. No big deal, right? Could have been a coworker, a client. But when she got out, she didn't check her phone. She just dried her hair, hummed a little tune, and climbed into bed. That was the first time I didn't sleep next to her. I mean, really sleep. My body was still, but my brain was pacing the hallways. The next day, I casually asked, "Who's MT?" Her spoon paused midair. Your phone lit up last night. Someone named MT. She blinked, then smiled. Oh, it's just Madison. From the design firm. Didn't know she went by initials. Claire shrugged. She's quirky like that. That answer should have put the matter to rest. And it would have, if the missing sock hadn't reappeared the next morning, freshly washed, neatly folded, on top of the dresser. I hadn't done laundry. Neither had Claire. Unless she had. But then, why deny seeing it? It sounds like a small thing. That's how it always starts. With a sock. A shrug. A harmless lie dressed in polite conversation. I didn't know it yet, but I wasn't chasing ghosts. I was stumbling into a haunted house. And the doors were about to fly open. It was a Wednesday when I stopped pretending. Not because something dramatic happened. There was no lipstick on a collar, no perfume I didn't recognize, no ominous text message flashing across her screen. It was subtler than that. It was the way Claire laughed at something on her phone and didn't turn it toward me to share. We used to do that. A shared meme. A dumb video. A friend's new baby photo. That tiny laugh used to be an invitation. But now it was a closed door. And I'd started knocking. I told myself I wasn't suspicious. I was just observant. That's what men say when they're too proud to admit they've been played. But deep down, I felt it. The offness. The way silence had crept into the house like a draft. So I started paying attention. Not in the creepy, checking her email sort of way. Just noticing. Cataloging. Like how she started working late more often, but always came home wearing lipstick that hadn't smudged. Or how she began locking her phone, a habit she'd never had before, not in 10 years. Or how she suddenly had a password on her laptop and claimed it was for security compliance at work. Claire didn't lie with words. She lied with structure. A perfectly folded blanket on the couch, a coffee mug always rinsed. Lies hidden inside order. That was her style. One night, I stayed up after she went to bed. Just sat in the living room, lights dimmed, pretending to watch a late-night rerun while her phone, forgotten, buzzed faintly on the kitchen island. It was vibrating every few minutes. Nothing loud. Just quiet enough that it felt secretive. That's when I saw it. The screen flashed just enough for me to see the message preview. MT. Same time Friday? Missed you today. Missed you. There it was. Casual, familiar, and just this side of damning. My stomach nodded. Not because I had proof, but because it confirmed what I already knew. My marriage wasn't a fortress. It was a stage set. Painted walls and hollow backing. The next day, I called in sick. I told Claire I had a migraine. She offered me Advil, kissed my forehead, and left for work in a knee-length pencil skirt that, ironically, I bought her 2 Christmases ago. I watched from the upstairs window as she pulled out of the driveway. Watched her take the second right, not the one toward her office. The one toward downtown. Subtle. I waited 15 minutes. Then I followed. Now, let's be clear. I wasn't proud of what I did next. I wasn't raised to tell my wife like I was auditioning for a low-budget spy thriller. But I also wasn't raised to smile through betrayal. She pulled into a small cafe 2 neighborhoods over. Classy place, rustic tables, trendy lighting, everything in softwood and exposed brick. I parked a block down and walked past slowly, sunglasses on, ball cap low. It was laughable, how cliché I looked. But I didn't care. She was already inside, seated near the window, smiling, laughing. And across from her, a man. Mid-30s, tanned skin, tousled hair, the kind of stubble that looked expensive. He reached across the table, touched her hand. Not long, not crude. Just a light brush. But her face lit up like it was New Year's. I didn't barge in. Didn't cause a scene. I just stood there for another 30 seconds, watching the woman I thought I knew become someone else through the glass. Then I walked away. That night, I didn't say anything. She came home with takeout, Thai food, still warm. She even made a joke about how we needed a vacation, just the 2 of us. I smiled, ate my pad thai, kissed her goodnight, and I began planning. Not revenge. Not yet. Just clarity. Because something in me snapped, not with rage, but with focus. I was done guessing. The next morning, I called a friend of mine, Eli. Former Army, now runs a small private security firm. Discreet. Professional. And most importantly, expensive. Hey, I said, I need a favor. Something clean. No confrontations, no drama. Just the truth. There was a pause on the other end. Then Eli said, "You want eyes on her?" "Yeah," I replied. "And ears, if you can manage it." 3 days later, I had a manila envelope in my hands. Inside, timestamps, photos, receipts, voice transcripts. Claire had been seeing MT for nearly 5 months. His real name? Marcus Turner. Divorced. Former client. Now apparently her creative inspiration. They met twice a week, sometimes for dinner, sometimes at his place for design consultations, as the report dryly put it. She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd turned her affair into a recurring appointment. And me? I had the receipts. I closed the folder, set it down gently, and poured myself a whiskey. Not to drown the pain, but to toast the beginning. Because if she wanted to play this like a game, I was finally ready to stop playing fair. The thing about betrayal is this: it teaches you patience. Not the Zen kind. Not the kind monks write about in bestsellers or that therapists suggest when you're stuck in traffic. No, betrayal teaches you strategic patience. The kind you learn when you're sitting on a loaded weapon, waiting for the perfect moment to pull the trigger without leaving fingerprints. I didn't rush my next move. That's what people expect, the righteous explosion. A confrontation at the dinner table, yelling, crying, some shattered glass for effect. But that's not how you win. That's how you get played again. So I smiled more. I texted Claire throughout the day. "Hope your meeting goes well. Dinner tonight?" She responded like nothing was wrong. Send emojis. Wrote, "Love you," with a little heart. It wasn't love. It was autopilot. Meanwhile, I had Eli's men keep the updates coming. They weren't all scandalous. Claire still had a job, still went to yoga, still bought groceries like everything was fine. But every so often, the photos came in. Her car parked outside Marcus's condo. Her laugh midair, head tilted toward him like he hung the stars. Their shadows close closer than any colleague should be. She always left before 9. That was her game. Keep it short, keep it secret. Pretend she just stopped by for business. But secrets don't live in the hours, they live in the pattern. And I had the pattern. I didn't need to confront her. I needed her to confirm it herself on record, with no deniability. So I played dumb. One Thursday, I got home from work early and told her I'd booked us a spa weekend. Surprise. I watched her eyes flicker. A millisecond of hesitation. She smiled too quickly. "That sounds amazing. I'll have to cancel a client consultation Friday night. But no biggie." "Oh? You sure?" I asked, real casual. "Thought that one was important." She blinked. "It was just a minor thing." I kissed her forehead. "Then we'll leave early. Just us." She hugged me. And I knew. She was going to lie to him too. Friday morning, I dropped her off at work like the good husband I was pretending to be. Then I called Eli. Tonight's the night. By 7 p.m., Claire was at Marcus's apartment. Not a hotel. Not a restaurant. She was parked at the Lion's Den, wearing a navy dress I'd bought her 2 birthdays ago, the one she said made her feel like a better version of herself. We had audio. Crystal clear. "Marcus, you sure he bought the spa story?" Claire, laughing. "He bought it like it was on clearance." "Marcus, you're incredible. You know that?" Claire, "I know." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stared at the phone, listening to her confess with the ease of someone discussing dinner plans. Afterward, I poured another whiskey. Laughed to myself. It wasn't even rage anymore, it was detachment. Like I was watching the highlight reel of someone else's heartbreak. But now? Now it was my turn. I spent the next week building my plan. Methodical. Quiet. I wasn't going to scream gotcha and storm out. That's for amateurs. Claire had given me something far better than anger. She'd given me control. I contacted a lawyer, a quiet bulldog of a woman named Sandra who didn't believe in dramatics, only results. I gave her the folder, the timestamps, the recordings. She flipped through the pages, nodding once. "You want the house?" "No," I said. "I want the truth. And I want her to feel it." We filed. Quietly. Claire didn't know. Not yet. I updated my will. Separated our finances. I rerouted my direct deposit to a new bank account under my name only. Closed our joint savings and wrote her a check for her half, dated 1 week in the future. All while kissing her goodnight. All while she texted him under our roof. Finally, I booked a dinner. Her favorite restaurant. Ocean View. The kind of place with linen napkins and wine lists heavier than some novels. She dressed up without asking why. Wore red lipstick. Said, "This feels like old times." "Yeah," I said, clinking her glass. "Like the good old days." We made small talk, safe, surface-level stuff. Work, the weather, a friend's upcoming baby shower. I let her think this was some kind of rekindling. Then the waiter came with dessert. Only instead of tiramisu, he brought an envelope. Placed it gently in front of her like it was a birthday card. "What's this?" she asked, smiling. "Open it," I said. She did. The smile cracked. Inside, copies of the affair report, audio transcript, the filed divorce papers, and signed, but only by her. For a moment, she didn't move. Then she looked up, trying for composure. You've been spying on me?" "I've been watching, Claire," I said, voice level. "Big difference." "This is insane," she whispered. "I can explain." "I hope so," I said, finishing my wine. "The lawyer's contact info is on the last page. You have until Friday." She stared at me. A mixture of anger, fear, and the dawning realization that the game was no longer in her hands. I stood, pulled on my jacket. "You know," I added, turning to leave, "you always said you were the one who designed spaces that felt like home. Turns out, I was the one holding the foundation together." And with that, I walked out into the cool night air. The next chapter? That's mine. The next morning, the silence in the house was different. Not the usual soft kind, the kind that hums like a refrigerator when everything's okay. This one had weight. Like the air had thickened. I came downstairs, coffee in hand, and found Claire sitting on the edge of the couch like a defendant waiting for a verdict. She didn't say a word, just stared ahead, eyes fixed on some imaginary thread on the floor. "I guess you read everything?" I asked, sipping my coffee. She nodded once. "You blindsided me." I almost laughed. "Yeah? You feel blindsided? Must be nice." Her voice cracked. "You should have told me." "Told you?" I raised an eyebrow. "That I knew you were sneaking around with a guy whose cologne smells like rental cars and regret? I figured I'd let you enjoy the fantasy a little longer." She blinked, stunned by how calm I was. She probably expected yelling. Maybe tears. Definitely begging. But I was past all that. I'd moved on emotionally about a week before she even got that envelope. "Jack," she started, voice trembling, "it wasn't supposed to happen like this." "No, Claire," I said, setting my cup down with precision. "It wasn't supposed to happen at all." She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. Because deep down, she knew she wasn't sorry for the affair. She was sorry she got caught. There's a difference. And now, she was stuck in a house that no longer welcomed her, opposite a man who had quietly removed every piece of leverage she thought she had. I'd emptied the joint accounts, changed the will, redirected my investments into private trusts. She was standing on a rug I had already pulled. She tried once more. "We could have fixed this." I stopped her with a glance. "Claire, I gave you 10 years to fix this before it even happened. What you broke isn't just our marriage, it's my faith. My peace." She dropped her eyes, and I watched the performance collapse in real time. The trembling hands, the staged remorse. She wasn't built for consequences. She was built for applause. By Thursday, her lawyer had reached out, some stiff named Martin with a voice like lukewarm soup. He tried to sound confident on the phone. "My client would like to reach an amicable settlement." "Tell your client," I said, "that this train already left the station. We're not negotiating. We're executing." Click. Claire moved into the guest room by the weekend. It was surreal watching her walk around the house like a visiting relative, quiet, cautious, unsure what she was allowed to touch. The woman who once redesigned every room now tiptoed around them like they belonged to someone else. They did. I wasn't done yet, though. Oh no, not even close. You see, Claire didn't just cheat with Marcus. She leveraged him, used my name to get him contracts. She'd slipped him into design referrals tied to my company's client list. I had the records, the emails, courtesy of a disgruntled assistant who didn't like the way Claire spoke to her one too many times. So I made a call, then another. By Monday, Marcus's little design firm had lost 2 major contracts. One of them was my company's, and the other belonged to a vendor who owed me a favor and didn't like liars. Claire found out through a text at dinner. Her fork clattered against the plate. "You're sabotaging him?" "No," I said, cutting into my steak. "I'm just rearranging the truth. You two had your fun. Now I'm handling the cleanup. You're ruining his career." "And you ruined our vows," I said, still chewing. "I'm just playing by the rules you wrote." She stared at me like I'd grown a second head. That's the thing about people who lie well. They assume the ones around them won't learn to do the same. She left the table without finishing her meal. I poured myself a second glass of wine. It tasted like justice. That night, she tried a new tactic, remorse. Real or fake? Hard to tell. She knocked on my door, stood there in an old hoodie she hadn't worn in years, the one from our first trip to Maine. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded, motioning her in. She sat on the edge of the bed, like we were playing some nostalgic game. "I don't want to lose everything." I stared at her. "Claire, you already did." Her voice broke. I was scared. I felt like we were fading. "And instead of telling me that," I said, "you handed our marriage over to a man who calls himself MT, like he's a Bond villain." "I didn't mean to." I stood. "You did exactly what you meant to do. And I let you believe there'd be no price. That's on me. But now," I leaned closer. Calm. Cold. "The bills come due." She left the room in silence. I didn't follow. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. Not because I'd won. Because I'd stopped losing. By the time Wednesday rolled around, Claire decided she was done being quiet. I came home from work, tossed my keys in the dish by the door, and found her in the dining room surrounded by neat stacks of paper. Legal pads. Binders. Sticky notes. She had commandeered the oak table like it was a war room. All that was missing was a red string map and a tactical team. She looked up. I sharp. I spoke with Martin again. "We're not signing your version of the agreement." I smiled and dropped my laptop bag on the floor. "Of course not. That would require humility." She stood up like she meant business. "You can't take everything, Jack." "I'm not." I walked over to the bar cart, poured a whiskey. "Just the part that doesn't have your name engraved on it." She stepped around the table, crossed her arms. "You think you're invincible because you beat me to the punch." "No, Claire," I said, sipping slowly. "I think I'm free." "That's a very different kind of power." Her jaw clenched. "You humiliated me." "Correction. You humiliated yourself." "I just filed the paperwork." She threw a folder onto the table like it was an ace in a poker game. "You want to play dirty? Fine. Let's talk about your consulting income from last year. You think the IRS will appreciate your definition of non-reportable bonuses?" I didn't flinch. "Those bonuses were through my LLC." Fully declared. "Really?" she said, tilting her head. "Because I have copies that say otherwise." "I'm sure you do," I replied, walking over. I flipped open the folder, skimmed the first few pages. All legit, except one. The one she was banking on. The one marked with an address I hadn't used in years. "You printed the old set," I said, tapping the page. "The draft copies I kept as decoys. For moments exactly like this." Her face fell, just for a second. But I caught it. She scoffed. "You're paranoid." "No," I said, closing the folder. "I'm prepared." Claire took a step back. Her voice changed, cooler now, more measured. "You really want to go down this road?" I shrugged. "Claire, you brought the shovel. I'm just handing out maps." The next few days were a waiting game. Her lawyer tried twice to shake me down with emails full of veiled threats. I replied with timestamps, evidence logs, and a polite smiley face at the end of every bullet point. Petty? Maybe. Effective? Absolutely. Friday, she escalated. I got a call at the office from Human Resources. "Hi, Jack," my HR rep said, cautious. "We received an anonymous complaint regarding inappropriate use of company funds for personal travel. Do you have a moment to discuss?" I knew immediately where it came from. "Sure," I said. "Check my expense reports from the last 18 months. Every receipt scanned and categorized. I can resend copies." There was a pause on the line. Then a chuckle. "Yeah," the HR rep said. "I figured it was junk, but we had to follow up." "No worries," I replied. "And if the anonymous sender tries again, let them know I have receipts for my receipts." We hung up, and I sent Claire a single text. Still 2 steps ahead. Keep dancing. That night, she didn't come home. She didn't even call. And for the first time in months, I slept like a man who knew exactly where the wolves were. The weekend passed in silence. I spent it clearing out the garage, boxing up tools, old memories, and pieces of a life I'd already started replacing. Claire didn't return until Sunday night. She walked in wearing sunglasses and the kind of silence that screamed, "I lost." She dropped her bag at the door, toed off her heels, and stood there like someone waiting for permission. I didn't speak first. She finally said, "Marcus is gone." I didn't look up. Was he ever really there? She walked to the fridge, opened it, closed it without taking anything. "He said he couldn't handle the pressure," she mumbled. "Didn't like being the reason a marriage ended." I nodded, still sorting tools. Men like him only like affairs, not accountability. Claire exhaled, long and slow. "He was never the plan." I wiped my hands on a rag, leaned against the workbench. "Then what was?" She didn't answer. She didn't need to. Because here's the thing. People like Claire don't think 5 moves ahead. They think 1. They think about the thrill, the spark, the escape hatch. They think someone else will always clean up the mess. She looked at me then, really looked. You're not the man I married. No, I said. I'm the man you built. Every lie, every late night, every quiet insult, this version of me? That's your legacy. She turned away. But before she could go, I added, sign the papers, Claire. You won't get a better deal. And she knew I was right. Because I wasn't bluffing. Not anymore. On Wednesday morning, the papers came back signed. No fanfare. No fight. Just a manila envelope slid under the office door, like a white flag too ashamed to wave. Claire didn't even try to include a note. I flipped through the stack slowly, checking for edits, traps, or late-stage bargaining. Nothing. Just clean signatures, hers and mine, on every dotted line. Sandra, my lawyer, gave me a crisp nod when I handed it over. She surrendered, she said, almost impressed. No, I replied. She conceded. Because there's a difference. Surrender suggests emotion, defeat, desperation. But Claire didn't feel those things. She just realized she couldn't win. Her power didn't live in the truth, it lived in my silence. And once I stopped protecting her, it all unraveled. A week later, she moved out. No big truck, no teary goodbye. Just a series of quiet exits, closet by closet, drawer by drawer. I let her take what she wanted. That was the trap. See, in the background, I'd already made calls. I'd quietly had my name removed from certain bills, joint subscriptions, anything that could be twisted into leverage. I made sure every item she packed had a traceable origin, a receipt, a record, a gift, with a paper trail. The only thing I asked her to leave was the wedding album. I don't want to remember any of it, I said. She paused. Not even the good parts? There weren't any, I said. Only setups. By Friday, she was gone. But I wasn't finished. 3 weeks later, Claire landed a new job at a boutique design firm downtown. Small team. High-profile clients. A reputation built on exclusivity and quiet elegance. She thought she'd escaped. But you see, the man she had cheated with, Marcus, wasn't just a fling. He was a fraud. One I had documented. His fake references, plagiarized portfolio, and questionable certifications, all delivered anonymously to his past and future employers in a neatly bound report titled, Due Diligence Matters. 2 weeks after that, he lost 3 of his biggest clients. But the real cherry on top? I sent a curated version of that same report to Claire's new boss, without naming her, of course. Just a concerned industry contact passing along some relevant information. A note at the bottom read, It's always best to know who your employees associate with, especially when client trust is everything. By Monday, she was let go due to internal restructuring. She texted me that night. You did this. I didn't reply. The next morning, she tried again. How long are you going to punish me? That time, I did reply. Claire, this isn't punishment. It's preservation. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. I didn't throw a party. I didn't toast to freedom. I just sat on the porch with Toby. Yes, I got the dog in the split and watched the sun set behind the trees. No metaphor. Just peace. The house was quieter now. But it wasn't hollow, it was calm. Like someone had finally turned off a radio that had been playing static in the background for years. One evening, I got a letter. Handwritten. No return address. The handwriting was unmistakable. It read, You won. I hope it made you feel better. I don't recognize the man I married anymore. I guess that's my fault too. I folded the letter and tossed it in the fireplace. Let it burn with the rest of the illusions. Because this wasn't about winning. It was about clarity. I never wanted revenge that made me ugly. I wanted revenge that made me clean. And that's what I got. I didn't destroy her life. I just took away her alibis. And when the dust settled, I still had my peace. And she? Well, she had a signature on paper and a haunting silence where my forgiveness used to be.